Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Panumansa Pariprajaka Ashtottara Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kunikiri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Tham Ki Jai Navadip Tham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Gangamai Ki Jai Jamunamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtite Sataname. Vancha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you, Kendra Prabhu. Nice kirtan. My apologies to all for the late start. It's called host confusion. That is, the host bewilderment. Anyway, here we are. Before the host gets any further bewildered, I wanted to assign some optional homework for probably next Thursday's class. I suppose by then we'll get to the last of the fourth of the regulative principles. And I did some reading. I thought, I wonder what the Grahasta Vision team might have to say. So I went to their website, and they do have some thoughtful and interesting articles on this topic. And I thought that this might inform our discussions. So again, it's optional. You can go through it or not. The homework is to read the articles, 3 articles, and there you are. So they're posted on the chat, or you can just take a look around the Grahasta Vision team site. But I've already done the looking around for you. These 3 articles are relevant. Okay. Now moving back to from where we're going to where we are, we've discussed these the first 3 of the first, well, in depth or some depth. The first 2 rules: no meat eating, fish or eggs, no intoxicants, including coffee, tea, cigarettes, pan, caffeinated energy drinks, kombucha, Coca-Cola, and so on. We talked about, just to say nothing of more powerful mind-altering substances. So no intoxicants, as Prabhupada used to say. We're already intoxicated enough just by being in this material world. And now we've begun in a previous discussion, the 3rd principle, no gambling. What is that? Dutam panam stuyam sunam shunam yatra adharma chaturvida. The Kali was given the opportunity to live in 4 places where there's gambling, intoxication, meat eating, and illicit sex. So this dutam is gambling, literally gaming, and it's a multi-billion dollar business, actually. And where there's gambling, there will also be intoxication, meat eating, illicit sex. From our practical observation, and also from the expert opinions of those in the industry, gambling is becoming the future of gambling, or a big part of the future of gambling is online. Phones in particular can be employed as platforms for gambling. Virtual reality casinos for a more immersive experience, live dealers as in a real casino, all of these things, and cryptocurrencies for anonymity and for gambling even in places where gambling is restricted because no one knows who you are. So there's all of these things in the sort of hardcore gambling industry. Then as we've discussed, Srila Prabhupada includes some other items in gambling, so that Rabindra Swarup Prabhu had quipped that gambling is the one regulative principle that everyone thinks they're following, and that so many people are not. So gambling includes, Srila Prabhupada said, mental speculation, and he doesn't elaborate on that at all that I've seen. But as far as I've been able to figure out, that means sort of impersonal, philosophical speculation about the nature of the absolute truth, particularly. It also includes idle sports. Gambling and idle sports, Prabhupada grouped together under the prohibited activities. Finally, he wrote to one prospective initiate, finally, you should not take part in any, he's already laid out the first rules. Then he says, finally, you should not take part in any gambling, including so-called sports, cinema, theater, or any such entertainment. So that's all categorized under gambling. And Prabhupada elaborated, he said, people are wasting time. So many sportings they have invented, sporting balls, this ball, that ball, you see. Human life is very short. We do not know when we shall die. Before that, we must prepare ourselves for the next life. Next life means directly going back to Krishna, the highest perfection. So the Krishna consciousness means to focus. Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana bahushaka hinantascha buddhayo vyavasayana. That Krishna consciousness means to fix the mind on one point, Krishna, and not let our mind get splayed out into so many things, and especially useless things, time wasting. So cinema, sporting, this ball, that ball. And of course, now well, I'll come back to this, but well, no, I won't. I'll start here, that this point of distraction is, we find in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not categorized as distraction, but we can identify distraction as being perhaps a species of this. 422:30, the Kumars say, Indriyara Vishaya Krishtayar Akshiptam Jayatam Manaha Chaitanam Hodate Buddhe Stambastoyam Iva Hridat. When the mind and the senses, indriya, the senses, and Prabhupada says the mind, are attracted to sense objects for enjoyment, indriya, vishaya, akrishtai, when they're attracted, and akshiptam, agitated, jayatam, manaha, when the mind is attracted by this combination of senses and sense objects. As a result of continually thinking of sense objects, one's real consciousness becomes almost lost. Hadate. One's real consciousness, or one's intelligence, buddhi, becomes almost lost. Stambatoyam iva hridat, like the water in a lake that is gradually sucked up by the big grass straws on its bank. But this is, I found quite instructive, that you've got a pond and it has water in it, but there's reeds and so on growing on the shore, and they can suck up all the water. So we have our minds, which are meant for being immersed in Krishna consciousness. But when we become distracted by Gramya Katha, by gambling, by intoxication, by illicit sex, by meat eating, these things powerfully pull the mind. The gambling is especially, well, I guess in the diagnostic manual, they would categorize it under obsessive compulsive behavior. The mind gets stuck on something, and when the mind is stuck on it, you just want to keep going and keep going and keep going. And what are you going on? Something of no importance, or something, something of no value to the self. A card game, a poker, a slot machine, whatever it might be, and you're hanging on it and focused on it. Where's the question of cultivating spiritual understanding under such circumstances? One completely forgets one's real consciousness, one's real situation in life. Often one even forgets one's financial situation, when stakes money one doesn't have. But as pointed out by Praveen, even if no money is involved, by the way, you're messaging me, Praveen, you can comment like that, you can send to everyone. Even if no money is involved, our consciousness is invested. Your consciousness is actually worth more than your money. Consciousness is worth more than your money. If you lose your money, you can still go on. If you lose your mind, you're lost. Buddhi nashat pranashati. So these are all means of, as we say, losing it, losing one's focus, losing one's self-control, losing one's sobriety. So that, where's the question of thinking of Krishna? One is thinking of winning. One is thinking of competing. One is thinking of getting rich. One is thinking of pleasing some woman who's watching or involved in some way. One is lost. Mode of passion and mode of ignorance take over. So in this way, the Krishna consciousness, or one's real consciousness, becomes almost lost. So your gambling and your sporting activities contribute to this effect, so that the mind becomes powerfully distracted from spiritual life. The internet age is an age of distraction. Maya gives with one hand and takes away with 8. So you have, you can find a map quickly. You can find all sorts of information quickly. You can book a flight. You can do this. You can do that. But so many other things come into play, and one can easily be distracted and distracted and distracted. The internet is of that nature. There were a couple of comments. Prabeen says, children play sports and smartphone games. Balas tava and krida shakta. It's Shankaracharya's verse, if I remember. Do these come under gambling? Well, they do, don't they? Of course, children are allowed to play games and so on, but these computer games and these smartphone engagements lead to distraction, lead to agitation of the mind. And by the way, lead to more sophisticated gambling. As I was looking at a professional industry website, I saw that one item that's there in the trends coming up is, what is it called? Free to play, F2P. F2P is the professional abbreviation. Free to play. So you get your smartphone app and you can play games for free, but the industry is watching you. They see this person likes to play. They have their cookies all over the place, so they know what you're up to, and they're looking to leverage your playing proclivity. So they're developing all sorts of gambling that requires a little more skill, because they see that people like to do something that's skillful, not just entirely chance. So they're looking to upgrade you, as it were, from just free games to paid participation in more serious and more profitable for them forms of engagement. In other words, gambling. So that's, and it starts young, so that your kids are playing with all these games, and they're sort of, already lined up, already primed for other online engagements of a useless or vicious nature, and so distracted from the real purpose of life. Let's see, let me scroll down in the comments here. Okay, I'm going to come to Sankarshan's comments soon. I might also point out social media as a terrible time suck. There may be devotees who are skillful at using social media in Krishna conscious ways, but there are also social media platforms that are skillful at just engaging us and engaging us and engaging us for no real benefit. And so one spends so much time socializing, gossiping, arguing on social media, and at the loss of time that could have been spent in service, in chanting Hare Krishna, in reading Bhagavatam, and so on. Then we have a question. But I'll say one more thing before we go there, and that is that a feature of laptops, and especially of phones, that is exceedingly conducive to time wasting is their privacy. Their privacy. Previously, if you were going to the cinema, it meant you were going to the cinema. You might be seen there. You certainly had to make some, get from here to there. If you were a brahmachari living in a temple, you'd have to do something to change your profile to get out there. It was, or in any case, even if you're a grahasta, you knew I'm going to the cinema. But now it's just part of what's on your phone. So you go from looking for an address for a doctor's appointment to checking out the New York Times to going to YouTube and seeing some devotional video, and then seeing some other video, and then seeing some other video that has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. Then it's a real easy slide. It's a real easy slide from Krishna conscious engagement to non-Krishna conscious engagement. So smooth that you hardly notice it. You're watching a Krishna conscious video, and then the next up is something that's not Krishna conscious, and it just starts playing without you're hardly needing to do anything about it. That's intentional on the part of those who manage the platform. They figured out that why should they wait for you to express your desires when they can reach out to you and suggest, wouldn't this be interesting? Wouldn't this be interesting? So it becomes private Maya, private sports, private games, and private porn also. And I've heard from quite a number of devotees who have that problem. The internet is not benign. Okay. This question from Sankarshan. Bhagavad Gita 6:17. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. Yukta ahara viharascha, yukta chestasya, karmasu, yukta swapnasya, bodhasya, yukta swapnava bodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. So in the purport, Prabhupada addresses everything but recreation. Can we guess what Prabhupada refers to as recreation in Krishna consciousness? Well, without guessing, we can say that Prabhupada pointed out dancing as a form of recreation. Tulsi Priya wants me to adjust my camera. Which way would you like me to adjust it, Tulsi Priya? Yes, okay. So so Prabhupada said dancing, that's our recreation. That's our recreation. Swimming, he also said, was acceptable recreation. And the acharyas on vihar literally means walking. Yuktahara viharascha. So it's translated as recreation. And literally, I believe, dictionary definition, walking. It's either the dictionary definition, I'd have to look it up, or the acharyas have commented on vihar in that way, walking. So walking is excellent recreation. Our doctors will recommend it. Yes, and Prabhupada himself, for his health every day, he didn't do, push-ups and sit-ups or even yoga, but he would take massage every day and walking. Yeah, literally it means a lot of things, including recreation, sport, play, pastime, diversion, but walking for pleasure or amusement, wandering, roaming. And that's the meaning which, if I recall, perhaps it was Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur has given walking. That recreation, not basketball, football, hockey, golf, archery, and so on, pistol practice, but walking. Bhattu Gopal says, I see devotees, some senior too, who are into reading. So after reading all Prabhupada's books, they start reading stuff from Shakespeare, Game of Thrones, etc., etc. How to see that, especially if they're senior, as it could be as offensive if we speak up. Well, good question. That's another kind of sense gratification. Reading, the attraction of reading can really be strong. It can be attraction for novels and fiction, which Prabhupada directly speaks again about as being essentially Maya, or it can be just reading about this and that, the newspaper, the history, so many things. I personally confess in this open assembly a weakness for reading Shakespeare. I think I've gotten over it largely, but it's first class boga. What can I say? I could say, well, Prabhupada quoted Shakespeare and so on, but I'm aware that this is a distraction. That our real taste should be for Srimad Bhagavatam. My only, I won't offer excuses, but it's I think an illustration of what Bhattu Gopal is saying is that we easily become attracted to just so many topics. What is that? Shrota Vyadni Rajendra Nranam Santi Sahasrashaha Apashatam Atmatattvam. For those who are blind to self-realization, there's so many different topics to engage us. So I think we were discussing this last week, that this regulative principle, no gambling, can require some introspection. It's not just like we know this is either an intoxicant or it's not, and if it is, we're not supposed to take it. But then, a book, is it boga, as we might say, or is it for my service? What exactly is going on? I've heard from devotee writers that they read other literature for ideas or style for their own writing in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, and I've done that. And at the same time, I'm conscious that I know devotee movie makers who watch movies for their service. And all of us, we have something that we can say, well, I'm doing this, I'm going here, I'm going there for my service. And it may be for our service, but but we need to be careful. We need to be careful. That much, I think I would say. We don't have an absolute prohibition, as we do, no coffee, tea, or cigarettes. There's not, you could smoke a few joints for your service. There's none of that. But when it comes to can you look at a book, it gets more subtle, because yes, you can, and yes, you may pick up something for your service, but yes, you may waste time. Yes, you may be attracted to something of the illusory energy. So it's something for us to consider carefully and to be watchful about, because Maya is very subtle. Maya is very, what would you say, powerful. Durachaya. Praveen confirms, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says one who controls eating and walking, ahara and vihara. So ahara is eating and vihara is walking. So walk to the temple, or walk as Prabhupada did, chant Hare Krishna and walk, but not as we saw the meme, I guess they're called these days, not walking to, not on a japa walk to Starbucks. Okay, are there some, Tulsi Priya has a comment.
Jai Maharaj, thank you very much for this talk. It's very sobering. I may be stating the obvious, but over, I think, last week and especially this week, what becomes clearer and clearer, and I think it was something that was clear to me when I was very new, because I moved into the temple, and when you're in the temple, there's no scope for being distracted by other things, at least not when I joined, when there was no internet. You know, you had your service, and if there was any free time, you were with other devotees, and we were all watching each other. And so it was very, I wouldn't want to say easy, because we were all struggling with our desires, but it was not as complicated to stay on a very focused track. And what I'm being reminded of now is that it seems that what we really need to be remembering is that we're supposed to be one-pointed. We're supposed to be focused on the goal, and everything that we do contributes to that. And sometimes what I've heard from devotees, when you bring up, you know, this sort of uncompromising, although it's not really uncompromising, this uncompromising perspective, is they say you have to have balance. And I'm reminded of something in the Sri Upanishad where it talks about the culture of knowledge side by side with the culture of nescience. And it's not, yeah, it's in Sri Upanishad. And then I think in another part, Prabhupada says how we've focused all of our attention on material life. And so the balance is to focus strictly on Krishna consciousness. You know, it's not that, because we're already heavy in the materialistic side. So the balancing act is to focus exclusively on Krishna consciousness, because the material knowledge is going to be there making its demands regardless of what we do. It's unavoidable. So we have to balance that with Krishna consciousness. And that just that whole idea of focusing so, I don't want to say narrowly, but so concentratedly, so strongly, it's really, when you're not in the temple and when you're not surrounded by association, it requires a very strong effort of will.
Kadamba Kanana Maharaj and I were talking about this the other day, that to go back to Godhead is serious business. To advance in Krishna consciousness is serious business, and it requires absorption. It requires absorption. If it's just kind of a lifestyle thing, yeah. If it's just something, a sort of add-on, an addendum to my life, then that's different from what Prabhupada is looking for or teaching us. We're meant to be focused. We're meant to be well engaged intensively, but tivrena bhakti yogena, intense devotional service, not just kind of like, yeah, devotional service. You know, I do a little this, I do a little that, I do a little devotional service, kind of a tepid engagement. But we're meant to be, let's say, passionately and in a passionately engaged, not passionately as in the mode of passion, but
our whole heart
and soul, wholeheartedly engaged in devotional service, because that's what enables us, among other things, to follow these regulative principles. If we're not intensively engaged in Krishna's service, then Maya gets the opportunity to say, you know, what are you doing? You know, relax. Spend a little time with me. You know, don't you like me anymore? So so your point is well taken. Thank you. Venkatesh says, there are people who may not be ready to accept Srila Prabhupada's books directly. So I was thinking of telling them about your book, Vanity Karma, which discusses on purpose of life from Bhagavad Gita, etc. Is this all right? Oh yeah, it's all right. Sure. Authors will never complain. Is it necessary to read this book before recommending it to others? No, you can recommend it sight unseen, you know, if you on the on the reputation of the author or whatever you want, or what you've heard from others. You might want to read it yourself before recommending it. Much can be said for that, but and much is to be said for, I don't really get this, not ready to read Prabhupada's books directly. Prabhupada's books are accessible for everyone, some more than others. Some of them may be more advanced or more difficult, but there are books by Srila Prabhupada that are, available for all kinds of people, and you don't have to be a scholar or a sage. That said, I wrote my book specifically for a Western audience, as a Westerner, for a Western audience, and with a sort of special care to speak in language that would be comfortable for them, or natural for them, not comfortable, natural for them. So it has a different voice. It has a Western voice. I think of it as an adjunct to Srila Prabhupada's books, not a replacement. So first of all, I think we can distribute Prabhupada's books to everyone. That's point one. Point two, yes, you can. And Ishopanishad actually is, Sankarshan says SSR is easy to understand and loaded with deep philosophy, yes. And actually one of my favorite books for distributing to widely is Ishopanishad, which Tulsi Priya just mentioned. Very, I find it very accessible. Yeah, they say Prabhupada's book is religion, we don't like religion, and so on. Yeah, okay. So if they don't want a religion, if they, you don't like religion, here's a book on philosophy, then you give them Ishopanishad. It's not religion, it's philosophy. Or like Vaisheshika Prabhu, no, I'm Christian. Here, this is a book for Christians. It's again, Prabhupada's book. So Prabhupada's books are suitable for everyone. But yes, if you don't want a book on religion that's directly teaching religion, that's philosophy. So my book is there. I also recommend it for anyone, and especially for a Western audience. It's written specifically for a Western non-devotee audience. It doesn't presume any alignment or previous experience with Krishna consciousness. Thank you for that. Tulsi Priya said, I think we should encourage the reading of books by devotees, not because they're more accessible in terms of content, but because we usually know the authors, and that's a way to get non-devotees more intrigued. I'm more likely to read a book if there's proximity to the author. It's a kind of introduction. Yeah, if you can say that here's a book written by one of my friends, then yeah, they may say, oh, really? So one way or another, there's so many books, my books, Sachinandan Maharaj's books, Devamrita Maharaj's books, there's so many good books being produced these days, some of them really intended for an insider audience, and some of them intended very purposefully for non-devotees. So you can take advantage of those latter category and distribute along with Srila Prabhupada's books. We're rapidly reaching the end of our today's session. Are there more that someone would like to ask or say? Yes, Tulsi Priya.
I was just wondering if somebody is prone to reading a lot, and they are also inclined to writing. For instance, your book is based on your readings in Ecclesiastes, and so is that a way to redeem one's reading propensity, is by saying, okay, I've read this book, like I have a fondness for the philosopher Unamuno, and I've had this idea, it would be interesting to write about his philosophy from the point of view of Krishna consciousness. And so otherwise it's just another philosophy that's in my head. And I'm not saying specifically for me, but for anybody if they're intrigued by a certain topic, then it seems like you can Krishnaize it by writing about it or doing something to bring Krishna into it instead of just having it stuck in your head where it doesn't do you any good or anybody else any good.
That's possible. You just want to make sure that at the end, what you're doing is actually getting you and your readers involved in Krishna consciousness and not just indulging our fascination with Yeats or Shakespeare or Robert Burns or Bob Dylan or whoever it might be. Okay. I made it my business when I was writing my book to make sure that I was reading Srimad Bhagavatam every day, that I was reading a substantial part of Srimad Bhagavatam every day, so that I wouldn't just be absorbed in the Old Testament, but I would be sure I had something to offer. Okay, it's our tradition to end a couple of minutes before the hour so that we can shift over to the Tuaco Zoom channel, those of us who choose to do so. So we'll end here. And I think we'll have illicit sex as our next topic. So invite all your friends. And we'll begin that discussion on Thursday. And meanwhile, you have your homework, those who joined late. If you check at the beginning of the chat box, there's some articles from the Vaishnav Grihastha Vision team, ISKCON Grihastha Vision team, which you might like to read beforehand, just to further inform our discussions. You can cut and paste those before this Zoom session closes and the links disappear. They're the first item in the chat box. All right, there's one last message. Okay, and they're posted on the Vanaprastha Adventure Facebook page. So if they disappear before you can catch them, that's where they are. All right. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. All
Hare
glories.
Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj.
Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Shara. Hare
Jai Jai.
Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Kendra Prabhu. Jaya.